Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Purse Power Let's Share the Journey webcast. Thank you for joining us today. Sure appreciate it. We are in webinar format, so I'd appreciate it if you'd introduce yourselves on chat. Let's start with talking about what Purse Power is. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do it in mass, that we could drive change in a hurry. The purpose of the calls is to really connect you with one another. We started these when coronavirus happened, and we want to be a support system for you, connect you with each other, and provide you with some resources to be successful and effective during this time. If I have any of my board members or special guests on the call, thank you for being here. Sure appreciate it. And this is the way the meeting's going to go. First of all, I'll introduce Monica Smiley. She is the editor and publisher of Enterprising Women magazine. If you please share your comments via the chat feature. And then if you have any questions, please write them down as we go, and then we'll give you some time to ask your questions in the Q&A box. So let me go ahead and introduce Monica. Again, she is the editor and publisher of the national and global Enterprising Women magazine. It's so impressive what you've done, Monica. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah. All right. So she launched the magazine in May of 2000 to provide a strong voice for women entrepreneurs. And you've reached 1 million entrepreneurs around the world, from what I understand. That's amazing. Holy smokes. What an audience. She's also the president and founder of the Enterprising Women Foundation and leads its Young Enterprising Women Mentorship Forum program. And they host events for high school girls around the US and Canada. And the idea is to educate, inspire, and mentor the next generation of women entrepreneurs. So you're really giving back. The other thing that I think is really cool is the Enterprising Women of the Year awards that you put on. And you've recognized, I guess, 1,000 outstanding women entrepreneurs from around the world over the last 18 years. Amazing, amazing. And from what I understand, I think Phyllis Newhouse, who was a guest on our show, was actually a winner.
Yes, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
She was incredible. Go ahead.
Yeah, we inducted Phyllis into our Hall of Fame as well. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Absolutely.
All right. So one of the things that we'd like to do is find out more about you. Our audience always wants to know about your backstory and your journey and how you got here. So could you please tell us about that and how you formed Enterprising Women magazine?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you so much, Donna, for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to be here with everyone. Well, first of all, I guess I should say I've been a journalist and a magazine publisher for almost 40 years now, and met my husband, John Dancer, working on a photography magazine in Michigan many years ago. In the early 1980s, we actually started a publishing company together. Working with people who had an interest in starting a magazine and the financial resources, but didn't have the day-to-day know-how. So we ended up helping a number of people launch publications. And we ran a magazine together in the health and fitness industry for about 14 years as well. In the late 1990s, John was at a point where he was thinking about retiring. He was 15 years older than I am. And sadly, John passed away in 2016, but we worked together very closely for many years. And in the late 1990s, we were at a point where a publication we'd been running, we were getting ready to sell it. And I just said, I'd love for the next thing that I do to be something that I could really be passionate about, something that I'd really love. And I was kind of a rabble-rousing feminist in the 70s and 80s. March for the Equal Rights Amendment. Was such a strong advocate for women's rights, and of course still am. Yeah. And I'd been a women entrepreneur for many years, of course, and. So, my team and I, and particularly my managing editor, Carol Janae, and I really looked around and said, maybe there's room for a magazine for women business owners. At the time, the only thing that was out there was Working Woman magazine. And some of you may remember that publication, but it really reached everyone from a young woman right out of college getting her first job, right up through corporate women and also women entrepreneurs. So it was just too much for one magazine, to cover too many audiences. And that publication actually went out of business in the early 2000s. So, there were magazines, of course, some are still around, from, Business Week and Fortune and Forbes and others. But, at that time, if you looked at the masthead on those magazines, you would see almost no women involved. And if you looked at the profiles of the kinds of businesses that they talked about, women just weren't reflected in the pages of those magazines. They just didn't really have a voice. And it sort of falls in line with what was happening in women's entrepreneurship in the mid 1990s. There was a lot of research being done by the Center for Women's Business Research, which was originally part of NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners. And they were really looking at the cloud of women entrepreneurs. The census was starting to reflect some of the data around women entrepreneurs. And there was a shift going on from thinking that women were, starting just, sort of companies that would be, that you used to call it purse money, insignificant companies, to women really starting substantial businesses and growing substantial businesses. Banks were starting to recognize women entrepreneurs, and we were starting to see programs tailored specifically to help women access capital, which of course continues to be a challenge and an issue. But, things were really changing in the 90s. And so, it was really, I think, good timing for a publication for women business owners. And in fact, there had been an Enterprising Women in the mid 1990s that 3 women who were involved with the NABO LA chapter had been working with a gentleman who actually owned the magazine. And it went out of business. So when we started doing some research around whether we could do something for women business owners, we found the old Enterprising Women. They had a website that was still up. And I reached out to them. And back at that time, we all still had fax machines. And, I called, nobody answered. I wrote a letter, faxed it, and it landed, I'm sure, in this woman's back bedroom. And she reached out to me and said, well, the magazine's not around anymore. It went out of business, but, here's what we tried to do. So I actually ended up flying out to Los Angeles and meeting with them. And, their hearts were in the right places. It had just been a little bit ahead of its time. And none of the women who were involved in it had publishing backgrounds. They were all, women who'd come together with from different kinds of backgrounds, but none of them were magazine publishers. So we ended up buying the trademark rights to the name Enterprising Women for $10,000 and a couple of boxes of files that they had. And we basically, relaunched the magazine then the following year in May of 2000 as the Enterprising Women that we know today. So I'd like to share that it had that early beginning because, it's a nod to those women who had a great idea as well. And I love the name. We could have just started from scratch and picked a new name, but I love the name. And so we were off and running at that point.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's great. And back in the day, you guys really were trailblazers, you and Marcia Firestone and all the women that were trying to help female entrepreneurs. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you've got 1 million entrepreneur reach of your magazine. What role do you hope to play in the female entrepreneur ecosystem?
Well, so the mission that we see for Enterprising Women is really the same today as the original mission 20 years ago. And that is, we wanted to be a friendly place for women to gather. We wanted to give women a voice. Our tagline is the voice of women entrepreneurs. We wanted to connect women. We wanted a vehicle that would allow them to share their best practices. And in 2003, actually, you mentioned WPO, we started an advisory board for the magazine. And I always pay tribute and give thanks to Marcia Firestone for this because at the time I reached out to her and I said, Marcia, we'd love to start an advisory board, but I'd like you to help me kind of brainstorm what that might look like. Marcia came back to me and she said, I really want you to start it as a membership board and people are going to pay you annual dues to be on this board. And I remember I laughed and I said, no, I think I should pay them. I don't think that's a good idea. She said, no, listen, Monica, What we want to do is attract the top women in their industries who have reached a level of success with their own businesses, and they're willing to give back to support other women entrepreneurs, share their best practices, and help them grow their companies. And in the process of doing that, they're going to get some great PR and visibility for being a part of Enterprising Women. You can showcase them in many ways, but this is going to be a great vehicle for you. And she was so right. So we started the advisory board in 2003. I think we had 13 members. And we reached out to the leaders of all the major women's business organizations and said, we want all of you to be on the board. We want you to come together at least once a year at our event that we had also just started. And we can share a little bit about that in a minute. And that'll be a great way for you to connect with the other organizations, tell them what you're doing, and start to forge some closer ties and friendships. And one of the things I'm probably most proud of with the magazine is that we have really helped build bridges between the various organizations that are out there. In the early years, you didn't see a lot of that. In fact, there was some competition and sometimes some disagreements about, the various roles that people played. But, the joke was that we were like Switzerland. Everybody loved us. We had no enemies, and we could bring people together. And we've really tried over the last 20 years to do that and be that connector. So we started this advisory board. It had all of those key people, executive directors and presidents of the organizations. And then we said, well, listen, we've got, some advertisers who have supported the magazine. They want to get to know the women who are on our board as well. So we brought on companies like American Airlines and UPS and IBM, and in later years, Wells Fargo and Bank of America, a number of others. And so, we have 15 or 20 major corporations that came onto the board, over the years. But really the core was to connect the women entrepreneurs themselves. So we started reaching out to women who, had everything from businesses under $1 million to today we now have, several advisory board members with businesses over $1 billion in revenue.
Wow.
And, they're all over the US. And then as the magazine became global, we also started adding board members from other countries. So the idea was, the board could be as large as it needed to be. Right now it has about 150 members. And, the idea is we want it to be as diverse as possible. We want it to represent, geographically all over the US and around the world. We want all kinds of businesses, all sizes of businesses, because the women's business community is so diverse, right? And, the role of those board members became to really be ambassadors for the magazine, to write for us, to speak for us, and to really share whatever it was that they were the best at doing, and looking at how they had built the success of their company, and sharing those tips and that advice through the publication, through our conferences, through our website, through social media, all the ways that we engage with women. So I mention that board because it really has become the backbone of the magazine. And from a financial standpoint, it has been probably the reason financially that we're still here 20 years later. Magazines are like restaurants. They're tough to start. They're tough to keep in business. And, a lot of them don't make the 5-year mark. A lot of them go out of business in the first 5 years. And I think the reason that we're still here is that, we've had this grassroots support from so many women who love the magazine, who really believe in it, who have become, I like to say more than a magazine, they've become a community. And we've tried to make it a very welcoming, warm environment for them, so that, my joke is it's like being in the mafia. Once you get in, you can't get back out. So that's been important to us.
That is fantastic. And I totally agree with you. One of the things we've been trying to do with Purse Power also is get women to come together to support other women. If we act collaboratively, there's nothing we can't do, right?
Absolutely. That's so important.
I'd love to follow your model. Okay, so over the years, you have interviewed many, many prominent female entrepreneurs. And I'm just curious about your favorite interview and why.
It's a tough question because, as you mentioned, so we've given the Enterprising Women of the Year award to more than 1,000 women entrepreneurs from all over the U.S. and 10 or 15% of them from around the globe. And then we've had so many women who've come onto our board, and we've really gotten to know them. So I think about women like you mentioned, Phyllis Newhouse, who is from the Atlanta area, has had a military career, and has built one of the most successful cybersecurity companies in the world. We've inducted her into our Hall of Fame. I think about people like Gloria Bohan, who has I believe, the largest women-owned travel company in the U.S. and certainly one of the largest in the world. When I think about Gloria, and she's been on our board for probably 15 years, over $1 billion in revenues.
Wow.
She, is someone who was a technology leader in the travel industry. She owns cruise.com as a separate company, and was the first company to sell cruises online. So, back when when people didn't buy travel on the internet, she was one of those early technology innovators who paved the way to do that. And, has always been an early adapter of new technology. Really interesting woman and very successful and very giving. She's one of the strongest supporters of the Enterprising Women Foundation. So she, also has that legacy of really giving back. And then I think of people like Marjorie Krause, who is also the chair of the WPO. She's been on our board. We've given her the Enterprising Women of the Year award. We've inducted her into our Hall of Fame. Marjorie started a company called AppCo. It's a PR firm, but it's just so much more. She started from one small office to having offices all over the world. Her clients are presidents of countries, and world leaders. She's just built a really dynamic team. So, it's hard, Donna, because there are just so many incredible women. And again, many of them are on our board. This year we did something different. In honor of our 20th anniversary, we did something called the Top 20 in 2020. So we invited anyone who had previously won the Enterprising Women of the Year award, which is a once in a lifetime award. You can only win it once.
Right.
But we said, okay, we want to recognize 20 women who really stand out over the last 18 years. And this was really a tough thing to do, but we selected them, some for the way they had scaled their companies, to incredible levels. Some who had just, amazing legacies of philanthropy. Some who had given back to enterprising women, to our community in really significant ways through our foundation, or, just because they were always contributing to the publication, to speaking at every conference, to, really being leaders. And we put them on the cover of the summer issue of the magazine. So if your listeners are interested in learning who they are, at enterprisingwomen.com, if you click on that front cover, you can read a little bit about each of those 20 women who are on the cover.
That's amazing. Well, we're getting a question also about your magazine being in print or an e-zine. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's both. So there's a print magazine available by paid subscription, and we also have some partnerships with some organizations that all of their members receive the print magazine. And then most of the readership is on the digital side now, and you can access it two ways. So directly on our website, if you click on the front cover on the homepage, it will open up an e-zine, and you can page through it that way. But you can also download the Enterprising Women app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and the app is free. So you can read it on your phone, or, any way that you want to. And it's easy to share content with friends, et cetera. So, most of the growth has been on the digital side, and we really want to get it into the hands of as many people as we can.
The other thing, I was going to ask you this question later, but let me ask it now. The whole publishing industry is going through a ton of challenges, and it's very tumultuous, right? And you successfully made this transition. Can you talk about that? Because I'm sure there are other business owners that are having to do something similar.
Well, I think that the challenge has been, the old model for magazines really was, selling advertising, or selling, paid subscriptions. I came out of a background working with other business publications that had, what we call controlled circulations. So everybody in a given industry would automatically get the magazine. They would just access the lists, and all the revenue would come from paid advertising. And you would be working with major ad agencies, buying blocks of pages of ads over the course of a year, and that was where the revenue came from. So magazine publishing companies now are, they don't even call it circulation anymore. They call it audience development. And it's just very different. Very rarely does someone call just to buy a full page ad in the magazine anymore. They really want total engagement with your community. Mm-hmm. So they may want to have a presence in the magazine, but they also want to, be engaged with you in your social media work. They want to speak at your conference or have some role at your conference. They don't want to just have influence in one area. They want to totally be engaged with your audience across the board. So I think that's what most publishing companies are doing now. And most publishing companies are also in the event business. I mean, they're doing one or more events during the year, and that's driving a lot of their revenue as well. So,
is there any kind of corollary from that to other kinds of businesses in this time of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the companies that were already using technology and, working virtually, and it's been interesting because we introduced an every other week call for our class of 2020, our women who won the Enterprising Women of the Year award for the event, which would have been live in March of 2020, and we're now doing virtually October 19th and 20th. But what we're finding, of course, is everybody's working from home. A few people have started to go back to their offices, but most people are still working from home. And, the people who were already good at working virtually and had found ways for their team to connect virtually are doing the best. Everybody else is learning to adapt and to do that. I think what's going to come out of this is that, a lot of companies are actually going to be much stronger next year. Mm-hmm. An example being one of my class of 2020 honorees who's out in San Francisco had an event business. Of course, anybody with an event company has been devastated this year. All their live events have been canceled. Well, this particular woman decided to jump into the virtual event space. And she also decided to create entertainment experiences that could be shown at virtual events. So, she started booking musicians and, magicians and mind readers. And it's a little bit crazy, but, she has clients, big clients, she's out in California. So Facebook and Google and others who are doing events. And it can be a little bit dry to just sit in front of your laptop all day. So in between sessions, they're dropping in these fun, sort of entertainment pieces. And her company is producing those. And wow. She said, we're going to become a leader in doing this. We're getting really good at it. And she said, next year, when we go back to doing live events, I can add this as well. This is something that, for people who want to do hybrid events, or, I as I see it, I think most people will begin to do hybrid events, that they won't go back to just doing a live event. They will offer a virtual event as a companion or a hybrid event. So, if you think about it, it's, I was a little panicked at first, with the idea of moving from live to virtual, but we're trying to look at it as a real opportunity. And the challenge is, we're known to produce a really warm, friendly, inviting event where, we're really wrapping our arms around everybody and really getting to know them. And that's the hardest part of doing it virtually, that, you really have to work extra hard to make people feel involved and engaged when it's done virtually. But, I think we're going to be a stronger company next year because of it. I'm the eternal optimist. I'm trying to look at it that way.
Me too. So while we're on that topic, can other people attend? How do people get to attend your event?
They absolutely can. So we'll be opening up registration in September for the virtual conference. And the best thing is to just go to enterprisingwomen.com for that information. And our live events are open to others as well. We always put the information out there for readers and others. The core attendees have been the honorees for that year. And we usually select about 100 winners now every year. And so it's the group of winners, and because it's a once in a lifetime award for them, pretty much everybody comes. And we actually say at the on the nomination form, if you can't come, don't apply. Wait until a year when you can be there in person and apply, because we don't want people to win and not take full advantage of the experience of being there and meeting the other honorees. It also serves as the annual meeting for our advisory board. So we have that dynamic group of women coming together with the honorees for that year. And there's no way to not have a great event when you bring women like that together. It's just phenomenal. So it's not a huge event. It usually, we have maybe 300 people or so, but you get to know everybody there. And, it's just an incredible experience, which is why it's tough to not do it live this year, because we all look forward to it so much. We've had some great compliments over the year. We had a longtime advisory board member of ours who, I won't use her name, I don't want to embarrass her, but, her husband had been very ill, and we were all concerned about her, and he passed away about a week before our conference one year, and we just assumed that she wouldn't come. And lo and behold, she showed up, and she said, I started to think about it. There was nowhere else I would rather be than surrounded by the kind of love I knew I would feel here. Everybody would wrap their arms around me. And so she said, I'm here. This is you're the kind of people that we need to be around right now. And, and I always thought that was such a great compliment. It made me feel terrific.
That's wonderful. The thing that I was thinking about is, what are your criteria? So if people are interested in applying, what are your criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. So the nominations open up on October 1st every year for the award, and the nomination form is at enterprisingwomen.com. There's no cost to place a nomination, which I think is great, because a lot of companies do charge for you to enter a nomination, and we have never done that. You have to be a woman-owned business, in business at least 3 years. You can also be a partner in a firm. So if it's not 100% women-owned, you have to be a 51% women-owned company or a partner in a firm, which applies to attorneys and accountants and others often.
Sure.
Or you can be a company that has sought venture capital, and so you may be a minority partner because of that. So the criteria you'll see as you first log on and take a look at it. What we're looking for is women who have financially strong and growing companies. So we do ask you to share the revenues of your company for the last 3 years, the current year, and the 2 years prior. We're looking for women who are leaders in their communities. So you're asked to share your community involvement, what you've done, how you give back, your philanthropy, ways that you've helped your community. And it's also really important that you can share how you've mentored or supported other women and girls. And we've always included this mentorship component because from the beginning of the magazine, I've always felt like mentoring the next generation or supporting girls and other, women starting newer companies is so critically important. It's not enough to run a great company. You have to give back in significant ways. So, we'll see people enter who have fabulous companies, but they're not doing anything else but running their company. Mm-hmm. And you can understand, because it takes a lot of time, of course, and some people just don't have time to do that. But the women that we want to recognize are those who not only are they running a great company and they have that track record, mm-hmm. but they're leaders and they're giving back in significant ways. So when you find those kinds of women, they're really incredible to meet. And when you bring them together at an event and everybody has that mindset, again, you can't help but have a fabulous event, because they're all, giving, like-minded women who, are very willing to share what they've learned. And, they're not there trying to sell something necessarily. They're there open-minded, wanting to meet, wanting to make new relationships, And of course, they end up supporting each other's companies. We want that to come out of it. But that really, I think, sets the Enterprising Women of the Year award winners apart.
Amazing. You're really changing the world with what you're doing. That's awesome.
Oh,
That's awesome.
thank you.
Let's see here. I've got a question from Victoria Woods about your California Virtual Event Planner. Who is that? Who do you use? Do you remember?
The California Virtual Event.
Okay, the event that you're.
Oh, Natasha Miller
Okay.
it's Natasha Miller. She's out in San Francisco, and
Okay.
she's in the class of 2020 honorees. So another great way to learn a little bit more about her, other than maybe checking out her LinkedIn page or what have you. If you go onto the Enterprising Women website, the summer issue of the magazine is the awards issue.
Mm-hmm.
And take a look at that issue. I mentioned that the top 20 are on the front cover, but if you open up that issue, we profiled all 120 Enterprising Women of the Year honorees. So there are about 100 winners, and then there are about 20 women that are finalists or honorable mention. We call them champions. And there's a short profile on each of them, so you can find out where they're from, a little bit about their company, a little bit about their personal background. So that's a great way to kind of get a snapshot on all these women.
Perfect. Okay, guys, I'm going to get to your questions in just a minute. I just want to ask a couple more questions of Monica before we do. So this is a really rough time for a lot of people. You've been through several downturns, I'm sure, with your followers and your entrepreneurs. What learnings have you had about navigating this tumultuous time, given your prior experience?
Yeah. Well, I think that the women who are doing well right now are pivoting. I mean, they're figuring out what they can do that from their core business that will enable them to hang in there and get through this, but also look for new opportunities. And let me give you just one example.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman named Gia Macklin who has a company called EcoPlum, and she came onto our advisory board about a year ago. She also is an Enterprising Women of the Year award winner. She's got a company that produces eco-friendly, sustainable gifts, so swag for events that is not just plastic trash, but something that is eco-friendly, right? Mm. So, of course, her business was devastated. All the events were canceled. Everybody canceled their orders. So she pivoted, and she's in the mask business right now. I'm sure she'll go back to doing, all of her other, things later. But so she's doing things like she's got like a copper doorknob opener or something you can touch a elevator button with, because COVID-19 can't be transmitted with copper, apparently. So there are these very cool little things she's selling. You can put your company name on. She just recently got an order, I think it was for 75,000 masks for Columbia University.
Wow.
And so, she had to furlough some of her team, but she's gradually bringing people back. She's found a way to pivot. I mentioned Natasha, moving to the virtual piece. I think the key is, people are trying to keep their teams together. They're really trying to protect their company culture, keep people connected via Zoom or whatever way they can. One of our class of 2020 honorees on Thursday told us that her company is doing well. She's in the investment field. She's building an outdoor space with a fire pit and a fountain, et cetera, so they can start holding their meetings outside, because they haven't been able to bring everybody back to their offices. So, people are just being innovative and creative, and they're finding a way to take care of their teams. I've had other people say, I had to furlough someone, or I had to lay someone off, but, I lined up some interviews for them, or I opened some doors and I helped find them a new opportunity. So, there's just this, I think, such a caring culture that so many of these women have, that they're going to get through it. We know we're going to lose some companies, but I think many of these women are smart and resilient and tough, and they're going to find a way to get through it, and they're going to be even stronger next year as the business starts to come back. I really believe that.
Absolutely. All right. So with the 1,000 women that you've talked to that have won this Enterprising Woman of the Year award, have you seen kind of a theme in their secrets to success? How do these women get there?
Yeah, well, I think that they're risk takers for sure. They think big. And I think I know sometimes we can limit ourselves by not having a big dream for our companies, not seeing what that vision can be, that it can be, it can grow into something bigger. All of these women on the top 20 and so many others who have won the award, have just had phenomenal growth. And sometimes I read these nominations and I literally cry because I can't, we ask people, what's the biggest challenge your company has faced and how did you overcome it? And we hear these people write pages, about, tough situations with partners that didn't work out or, risks that they took that, didn't come through for them. But I think the bottom line is, they're really strong. They're really resilient. They weren't afraid to stick their neck out there. And most importantly, I think, is this whole HR issue that, surrounding yourself with a good team, with good people, it's absolutely at the top of the list. Really being able to build a team that, you can't be everything to all people. You got to find people who can do the things that you don't do well. And treat them well, have a company with great values, build a culture, to be proud of. I think those are kind of common themes with most of our winners.
Amazing. All right. I want to ask one more question, then I'll get to everybody else's questions. Okay. Given the environment, what are the trends that you're seeing on the horizon and how do we prepare?
Yeah, I think that being early technology adapters is just so important. Whatever industry you're in, not being afraid to embrace the technology that can propel you and your team, and your company forward is just so important. We've worked really closely with IBM over the years, and I've been amazed. They've done a panel, and they will be doing one, by the way, at our virtual conference. That they bring together 3 or 4 of their top women VPs, to talk about embracing technology in your business. And they usually have 1 or 2 women entrepreneurs involved as well who can talk about, what a difference it's made. But, so I think that embracing technology is just so important. And, as small business owners, I think we all know that it can make us look and feel like a big company. It can level the playing field and really give us an edge. But we also have that advantage that as a smaller company, we can be more nimble. It's not like, moving GM, to a new decision. We're able to be nimble and to respond quickly to what the marketplace is telling us. So that probably would be my number one advice in terms of just really looking at when we say trends, just, how can you stay on the cutting edge of your industry? How can you be a leader and an innovator? I think that's super important.
Critical for survival right now. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. So I've got a question from Nick Beatleston, who's saying, thank you for your team's leadership. Can you suggest some financing or startup capital opportunities for women-owned startups?
Yep. Well, we're working right now with a group called the Women's Business Collaborative. In fact, this is someone that Edie Frazier, who's a longtime member of the Enterprising Women Advisory Board. We've also inducted her into our Hall of Fame and given her our Legacy Award. So we've run out of awards for Edie. But Edie has started something called the Women's Business Collaborative. And I'm chairing the Entrepreneurship Committee as part of that group. And one of the things we're really looking at is access to capital for women entrepreneurs, and also looking at, the problem with women not receiving enough venture capital, the problem with there not being enough women-led venture firms. It's a critical issue. We are actually producing the winter issue of the magazine around access to capital and really looking at all of the, from crowdfunding to angel to venture to banks that are aggressively, putting programs together. There are a lot of resources out there, and we thought we've done this before, but it's been a few years since we've really done a comprehensive job at it. And so I would, urge your listener, take a look at that issue, because we're really going to be trying to showcase best practices and a lot of what is out there right now. And there are opportunities. And I think banks are more willing now to fund than ever. It's interesting through the years. I once had an opportunity to interview Hugh McCall, who was at the time the newly retired chairman of Bank of America. And he said, I have to admit this. He said, if a man walks into a bank, he can have the same business plan that the woman has. And maybe he doesn't really deserve the capital, but he goes in with all this confidence and sells it. And he is likely to walk out with the money. And he said, oftentimes we'll see women, this was a few years ago, but he said, we'll see women walk in and undersell their companies, have the same business plan, and they don't end up getting the money. And of course, that's a small part of the problem. We know the problem is much larger than that, but I think that women do have to have the confidence in themselves to be able to sell their company, to know that they deserve that money, that they've got the business that can support it. Certainly go into it with their ducks in a row. Have what they need and be prepared. To get that loan. But it's been a challenge. It's been an enormous challenge. And, women, we don't want to use stereotypes ever, but we have tended to be a bit more risk adverse. Maybe because we're in charge of everything. We're running our families. We're worried about our kids. We're worried about keeping a roof over our head. And so we don't have a carefree attitude about it. We actually added the question on the Enterprising Women of the Year application form a couple years ago. Have you used outside capital to grow your company? And the idea was really to get an understanding of who was doing that, to encourage more women to do that. Mm-hmm. The strange thing was we had people answering, no, I haven't, and I'm proud of it. I did it all myself. I bootstrapped it. I used my friends and family. They were reluctant to use other people's money. And I think that's a mindset that we need to change. We need to convince people, listen, if you really want to scale that company and you really want to grow it to the next level, you're probably going to need somebody else's money to do it. And that's great. That's okay. As long as you're prepared, you know what you're doing, use other people's money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I find the gap between women make or influence 67% of investment decisions, and we're going to hold 70% of the wealth for the next 2 generations. There's this gigantic gap between our actual power and what's happening. And I think that women need to get more active about insisting that companies support women with their money.
Well, we have, of course, the issue of the old boys club too, that, and especially in the venture area, that, men lend to other men. They're more comfortable with them. It's the same reason that, there are not enough women on boards. That's a major issue. And the Women's Business Collaborative is working hard on that issue too. That, when a board seat opens up, they get their buddy that they play golf with, on the board, or, somebody that they've met in some other role at a chamber of commerce or whatever, but they don't think about widening the search and looking at all the qualified women that are around them. They take the easy way out. And that's something that, we've already proven that when women are on boards, the company, if 2 or more women are on a board, the company is more successful.
Performs better. Yeah.
Tons of research around that now. We know that's true.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's starting to change. So.
Good. And I want to put in a plug for 2020 Women on Boards. If you guys aren't familiar with it, they do events every November. I think they're going to be doing it virtually too, but they're trying to help more women get on boards, and they're trying to prepare women for that kind of role. Betsy, I'm sure you must.
Yes, absolutely. And there are so many women entrepreneurs who are overlooked for board positions, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got women running these unbelievable companies who, absolutely should be taking more of those board seats as well. So,
Absolutely. Okay. Another question from Case Lane. Has the interest in entrepreneurship increased with the current economic concerns? Do you think?
yeah, I mean, I think women's entrepreneurship has been on the rise, for the last, 2 decades, for sure. Women are starting businesses at a faster rate than men. They're growing them faster. The climate right now, of course, would be pretty challenging for anybody. I don't know how many new businesses are starting in the middle of this pandemic. And of course, we're worried about those companies that are vulnerable. So that's certainly a major challenge. But the challenge that we have as women entrepreneurs is scaling our companies, is growing them to the size that most men grow them. So it's not starting them. I mean, we're starting them faster. And,
Right.
but the challenge is, how many women entrepreneurs have businesses with $1 million or more in revenue? It's unfortunately, I think the number is still about 2% of all women entrepreneurs, right, have businesses $1 million or more in revenues. So that's our challenge, getting those companies to really, and getting people to hire their first employee is huge. So you have, 80+% of all women entrepreneurs who have just themselves running the company. They have no employees. And of course, if you've got a team of 1099s, you don't necessarily have to have employees. You can run a great company with lots of 1099s. But, think about the impact if every woman business owner could hire one person to expand her company. Literally, there would be millions of new people employed by a women-owned firm. It would make a tremendous impact on the economy if we could do that. So, helping women understand how to take that next step is really important. And you've got, organizations like NABO and others, trying to do that, trying to help women take that next step, grow to that next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So Nick is also asking, can you suggest the name of some specific examples of companies which, like you mentioned, were forced to let employees go, but found ways to open new doors for them? It'd be great to have strategies and tools for that.
Yeah. One of our new advisory board members this year, a woman named Jenny Campbell, who has something called the Stewart Lodges. She's in Alabama, and she has several companies, actually. She has an investment company as well, but she also has a facility that is appropriate for corporate retreats and so forth. And she's had a tough year because of it. With that company, her other companies I think are doing fine, but with the Stewart Lodges, she's had a rough time because it had to close. And so she actually just shared on our call this past week that she made an effort to reach out. She's a leader in her community. She knows everybody. And, with each of the employees that she had to furlough, she reached out and found 3 or 4 other contacts in the community that she thought might be able to hire them. And she actually went so far as to help set up interviews for them. So, I think if you're able to do that and you can make those connections for people, I think that's terrific. And I think a lot of women are trying to do that, or they're trying to bring those people back as soon as they can. They're trying to shift and find other ways to grow the business here in the middle of the pandemic. And as they can add people back, they're doing that because they want to keep their teams in place. I also had a few people say, okay, I scaled my company back. Now I'm realizing that maybe a couple people on the team didn't contribute the way that maybe they should have. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to part ways, and maybe they should go find something that's a better fit for them. Mm-hmm. And the company may be stronger because of it. So, there's that aspect as well.
That's side too. Well, and I did HR for 30 years, and I spent 10 years of my career laying people off. And I think it is very, very important how you handle the people that are leaving your business, because the people that are staying are watching. The other thing is you may want them later. You may want them to rejoin you someday. So it's really important to treat them well, to your point. to your point.
Absolutely.
Okay, before we run out of time here, I want to give you a chance to talk about the Women in STEM program and the mentoring program that you have, just briefly. I know you care about that. I want people to understand what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, about 6 years ago, our good friend Edie Frazier started something called STEM Connector. Basically, it was an organization that connected girl-serving organizations like the Girl Scouts and Girls Inc. and others with universities, with Fortune 500 companies, basically anyone who had an interest in helping girls and young women get into one of the STEM fields, or STEAM. A lot of people like to add the arts. And so we were asked to become a partner in this initiative called Million Women Mentors. And the goal was to find 1 million people to mentor a young woman, high school, college, or early in her career in one of the STEM fields. And so at the time we joined, there were about 60 partners. We were the only partner with an entrepreneurship connection. And now there are over 400 partners, and now there's an entrepreneurship committee, and a lot of things have grown and changed. But at that time, we were the only ones. So we said, what can we bring to the table here? And what we decided to do was to start hosting after-school events. Some of them now are being held in the morning, but most of them have been 2-hour after-school programs where we put together a panel of mainly women entrepreneurs who represent the STEM fields. So, women in IT, women in medicine, architects, et cetera. And of course, the M in STEM being math brings in, business people as well. So we put a panel together. We reach out to the high school, one or more high schools in a community, and they identify girls who are high achieving in math, science, or technology and invite them to come. In the early years, we recruited those girls. Now we let the schools select those girls. And they basically hear a program where they're getting a panel discussion. They can talk to the women and ask them questions. We split them up into small group mentoring sessions so they can get to know the girl a little bit more one-on-one. Then there's a scholarship component to this program. And the local chairs don't have to do this if they don't want to, but most of them like to do it. For every $2,500 a local event can raise, they can provide a scholarship to one young woman who will come to the Enterprising Women Conference in the spring with a parent or guardian. Wow. And then we've had about a dozen of our board members who fly in a day early and run this program. So it's a 2-day program where the girls get leadership training, public speaking and self-confidence building skills, a panel on what it means to be an entrepreneur, a panel on opportunities in the STEM fields. Then we match each girl with 3 women who are either on our advisory board or they're winning the Enterprising Women of the Year award. And they do 3 20-minute one-on-one mentoring sessions with her, wow, which has been phenomenal. We've had internships come out of it. We've had women who have helped the young woman make a college decision. The parents love it, the girls love it, the schools love it. The evolution of this program over the last 6 or 7 years has been, we're really trying to emphasize high schools where there's a particular need, where a lot of the students are going to be first generation to go to college, a lot of young women of color. And we've also just really said, okay, if we're going into a community, and Columbus, Ohio is one great example I like to use. We had a board member who was in a suburb of Columbus who could have very easily put the program on in her backyard. But we said, let's go to the Columbus public schools and let's look at one of the inner city high schools. We approached them and they said, we can't pick just one high school. We want all 8 of our inner city high schools to participate. So instead of doing it at the school, they chose their top 10 girls from each of these 8 high schools. And one of our board members, Cindy Monroe from 31 Gifts, who had just bought the Bob Evans farm outside of Columbus and had this great training facility, bussed them in, paid about $1,000 for busing to the school district. We bussed the girls there for the morning, and they did a half-day program. And we added a STEM activity to it, and then it ended with a boxed lunch. And it was absolutely phenomenal. So that's where we're moving with this. We're trying to, whenever we can put 2 or 3 high schools together now, we're trying to do that. And we're really putting an emphasis on reaching more at-risk girls, or, just girls who are less likely to have a mentor in their family or someone who can give them some of this advice. And it just opens up opportunities that the girls have never considered. I've been to so many of these, and they often say, I'm really good in math and science, but I don't know what to do with it. And so we're opening up, all sorts of ideas to them of things that they can do. And then our entrepreneurship connection is we're showing them role models of women who are they may also be an engineer, a field they might be interested in. They've started an engineering firm. So our message is go into one of these fields, and after you get a few years of experience, think about starting your own business. You can do it. And here's, an example of somebody who's done that. We always like to say, you can't be what you can't see. Mm-hmm. So if you can give them, people that they can identify with, they can ask those, tough questions of, and the women will share, it's been a rocky road. These are all the problems I had. They can see it's not easy, but they can also see that here are some women who've done it. So.
I admire you so much. You're making such a difference. Congratulations. That's awesome. All right, we've run out of time. So what I'd like you to do is share the crucial things you want our audience to have learned from you and what you want us to do after leaving this call.
Sure. Well, I think bottom line is get connected and stay connected. We're all about making connections with women, bringing women together to share their best practices so we can support each other and learn from each other. I think that's number one. If you're not connected right now, there are so many great organizations out there. And of course, we would welcome you into the Enterprising Women community. Get connected. And I always like to say business is all about relationships. I think that's so key. Forming those great relationships just, makes all the difference in you being able to grow your business. And, it's important on a personal level, but, I'm probably most proud of all the really long-standing, warm, wonderful relationships that I've built with so many women over the years. It's just, it's absolutely priceless.
Yes. This community and supporting each other is so critical to all of our success. All right. So thank you so much for being here. Monica, really appreciate it. You've been amazing.
Thank you, Donna. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. All right. So just want to remind everybody our next few meetings. So on August 21st, we're having Lori Henkel. She's the SVP and the Charlotte Market Executive for Bank of America. We've got Lucy Lynch and Marcia Maker on August 28th, and they are the authors and playwrights of Money Talks, but What the Hell's It Saying? We have a technology leader from India, top technology leader on September 11th, and we're looking at doing a technology trade show on the 25th. On September 4th, because it's just before the holiday, I think we'll just go ahead and do a networking meeting, so I hope you can make it for that. So if you haven't signed up for a directory listing on pursepower.com, please do so. If you've got a company that has a female CEO or president, or is half owned by women, or has at least 20% women on the board, you are welcome, and we've got a free listing for you. Please download our Google Chrome extension on the Google Chrome browser, and it will show you which companies are women-owned or women-led when you shop online. And then we also, of course, do have phone apps that you can download from our website as well. Please use our directory to find and buy from women-owned and women-led companies. And remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. Thank you for being here. And thank you again, Monica.
Thank you, Donna.
All right. Take care. Everybody have a good weekend. See you next week.